Hi, everybody, and welcome back at Head in the Cloud, Heart in the Community. After our summer break, we are very excited to be back again, finally. And today we have one of our favorite guests. I'm so happy we got him on our show. But before we're going to introduce who our next guest is, I, of course, do not run the show alone. I do it together with my lovely co-hostess, Holly Lehman, based in Seattle, USA. So let's head over to Holly to say hi and to introduce our next guest.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody listening. My name is Holly Lehman, and I am on this journey with my friend Isidora. We are so happy to be traveling abroad virtually. And after a 3+ month hiatus, I am so happy to have us back. And I have to say, I think we say all of our guests are our favorite so that we are inclusive in our behavior. And we're just thankful for each and every person who's willing to take their time and be on this adventure with us and bring community together. So at that, I would love to introduce our special guest of today's episode, Scott Hanselman. And I always say, Scott, nobody can intro you better than you. So give us a quick overview of who you are, what you do for Microsoft, and just thank you for being on this episode today as we restart this journey.
Well, thank you very much for that kind intro. My name is Scott Hanselman, and I'm a person on the internet. I've been on the internet kind of since it started. This is now the 30th year of my software engineering career. I've been at Microsoft for about 14 years of that. And before that, I was a trainer, and I worked at Nike, and I worked at Intel, and I was a professor and an adjunct professor at a community college, as well as a state university here in Oregon. I've got lots of different job titles, but ultimately I think I'm a professional enthusiast and a teacher. So whenever I leave Microsoft, I'll probably end up teaching high school science.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Well, Scott, we see you're active everywhere. You mean so much for the community. And one of the topics I would really love to highlight is, so I saw that you ran an awesome campaign with your Hey Friends shirts, with all proceeds going to Black Girls Code. And you had set a goal of 50, and I saw that eventually 777 orders were placed and donations. Can you please tell us more about the importance of this initiative, and especially for the ones who missed it, if there's still a chance in the future to get the shirt again?
Well, first, that implies that it was somehow organized. A lot of people ask me if I have a plan, or how did you plan this, or how did you plan that? I was up at 1 or 2 in the morning watching Netflix, and I usually end up DMing friends, and I was talking with Kayla Cinnamon, who is the PM on Windows Terminal. And she and I were talking about how someone had asked for Hey Friends merch, because I always start my talks with Hey Friends. And I've done, 700 episodes of Azure Friday and 800 episodes of my podcast. And I start a lot of these things with Hey Friends. And she says, we need merch. So we were just up at 2 in the morning. So we went and designed these Hey Friends shirts. And then she made Windows Terminal matching like color schemes. So you can have your shirt match your Windows Terminal, which is cool. And then I put it up on a website called Bonfire, and you can see it at heyfriends.io. And what Bonfire does is on-demand printing. So when I think there's more than 50 requested, they make them. So yeah, it's kind of an eternal campaign. It didn't end. It'll go forever as long as it keeps reaching 50 plus. So I think we've raised something like $6,000 or $7,000 for Black Girls Code.
I think that's the one thing that, as I was doing my research, not to sound stalkerish at all, but on you, Scott, I noticed that, you do have a heavy investment in community and diversity and inclusion. And I think that's why people are so drawn to you. I mean, just saying, hey, friends, little things like that really stick, and it draws a room together. And I think that it's beautiful. And that was really the effort in this show, was we just wanted to bring community together. I mean, when everything kind of shut down, Izzy and I, who are so driven in community, thought, what can we do to keep community together? And so I think you are a perfect person to restart this journey with, because your effort is very similar to ours. And so thank you for that. You started by talking about, your career into tech. And quite often, as Izzy and I are the non-technical folks in Microsoft, we've learned that everybody has a really unique story as to how they got into tech. And so we find that to be a really heartwarming story as we think about people that are not in tech and want to be in tech, or why should I be in tech? There's so many questions out there. So tell us, how did you get into tech, and over your career, what has been your favorite role? And maybe we can touch on Azure Friday as well, because I know people love Azure Friday.
Yeah. If you don't mind, though, I do want to go back to something that you said, and I want to gently offer you some coaching as a friend, because you said non-technical, and I've decided we should get rid of that. So
Perfect.
what I
it.
would encourage you to try saying, and this is a thing that we're working on, is a non-coding role.
I like that even better, because that's true.
Yeah, you are in tech. I know, I know your boss's boss, Nicole. You work for Takeshi. Like, you're all very technical. You know what I mean? You're a product marketing manager for a very important cloud platform.
Yes.
It's pretty technical. So rather than people kind of have that apologetic, like, not technical thing. So just like, well, I'm in a non-coding role. That way we can assert our technicalness.
So that goes back to what I wanted to touch on, because I think that is an insecurity and an imposter syndrome that a lot of us have. When I talk to people and they say, well, I don't code, I'm not technical. So that's a great way to look at it. And it's something that I've said, that we need all skills and all skill sets in Microsoft. Otherwise, we can't go outside of our thinking box and our creativity. So I like the way that you said that, Scott. Thank you.
Well, thank you for taking it in the manner that I, with the kindness and the love that I was trying to give it with, because I know that, but because I see people like, oh no, I'm not technical. Like, I go to my parents, my dad's a firefighter, my mom was a zookeeper, and they're like,
that's so cool.
The computer, I'm not technical. It's like, well, you use a computer pretty well, but if you work at Microsoft, I think you're pretty technical.
Okay.
So the question was, how did I get started?
Yeah. And what's been your favorite role?
Well, my favorite role is whatever I'm doing right now. I'm very much a member of kind of the intentional, deliberate practice, try to be present in the moment. People fall asleep. It's really easy to live your life on autopilot. Our friend Abel Wang, rest in peace, used to say, don't accept the defaults. And part of that is trying to stay awake as much as you can, and not wake like sleeping and awake, and not woke like how people think of the word. I'm talking about present and conscious in the moment. Like, when you're driving a car and then suddenly you'll just lose a couple of blocks because you just were on, and you're like, oh, I'm driving, Trying to be present. Like, I'll lose days, I'll lose weeks. I'm like, I deleted email this week, or I worked on a couple of slide decks, but I wasn't really there. So multiple times a day, I try to just, okay, it's Wednesday, I'm doing this. I'm excited about that. I'm focused on this, try to be present, try to eat right, try to take care of my family, that kind of thing. So the role that I have the most fun with is what I'm doing right now, because if I was looking back at a role and saying I had more fun then that would make me sad. So that's my first bit of a rambling. The second one is when in the 80s, in the neighborhood that I lived in inner Northeast Portland, did not have like a computer for every kid, and we did not have a computer lab. There was a computer, right? It was like the computer. We had the one. It was an Apple II, and when it arrived, it was really cool. And I just found myself drawn to it, and then I would stay late. And Mrs. Hill, who I actually wrote about in my blog, was my 5th grade teacher, and she said, this Hanselman kid, we should let him play with the computer more. And how are we going to let him do that? Because we want to make sure it's fair. So she came up with an incredibly unfair plan. She let my dad back his pickup truck up against the school, and we stole the computer on Friday nights. And as long as I had it back Sunday night, no one would know that it was gone if it was perfectly set up. And that kept me kind of off the streets. And during the trouble that we had in the 80s in Portland, I was hiding in my parents' basement, coding on an Apple II. And if that hadn't happened, I think I probably would have been voted most likely to commit a white-collar crime, some kind of identity theft, or I was a hooligan.
That's a very impressive story. So what I really love what you said about living in a moment and in the present and in the now. I'm really with you on that. And especially with you, you have so much going on. I mean, I cannot even imagine how your day looks like with family life and work and community and literally everything you do for the whole world. So speaking of, you have a huge fan base of hundreds of thousands followers across all your social platforms. And yeah, you surely keep us entertained and well educated. So just imagine all of these social platforms where you're very active with all the content you share with us. If all of them would go down at the same time and they would be out for a month, what would you do with all the spare time that you suddenly have?
Well, so thank you very much for the kind compliments. There was a lot there. It all started from the blog and the podcast. And if all the social networks went down, I would still have the blog and the podcast, which is really important because I did a blog post many years ago called Own Your Words. If someone invests too much in their social platform and then the walled garden goes away, right? MySpace and Friendster and Google Reader and all these different things that we invest so much in decide to disappear, then we would be alone. But I don't have that problem because I own my words. My domains are owned by me. My websites are owned by me. So I would probably blog more, and I've got backups of all my YouTubes, and I've got backups of all everything. So yeah, it might take a minute or two to get the videos back from my YouTube archives, but the blog and the podcast would continue. And I believe that your words online should start from a domain and a website that you own, and then it should flow out from there. So I try not to put any content on one place that someone else owns if I can't get it back.
So you would still, from deep down in your heart, you would still want to be there for us and share with us and share your knowledge with us. That means, yeah, that means a lot. Well, that you didn't say like I would go kayaking somewhere or yeah.
Oh, I can do all that stuff now anyway. I live in Oregon, but do you have? You said, Holly, that you're in Seattle. Is it, or whereabouts are you time zone wise right now?
So I'm in Switzerland, in
Switzerland.
Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm central Europe. Yeah.
Do you ever have people knock on the door and try to convert you to their religion in Switzerland?
Actually, we don't. No.
Okay. So some countries have this. In the U.S., sometimes someone will knock on your door and they'll say, "Hey, have you heard the news?" And they want to talk about their thing. And I used to think that was annoying, but then I realized that how great it would be to be so excited about something that you went to a stranger's house and wanted to say, "Have you heard the news?" So I really love that that's exciting for them. And I just love that for them, that they're so excited. So I try to be excited about my things. So what I really think about it as, I'm just excited about being empowered in tech, about tech as a possible career that creates generational wealth for underrepresented people, that you can build stuff. So I'm going to just be knocking on doors, wandering around the neighborhood here in the US going, "Have you heard the news?" And then they'll be like, "The news about what?" "Oh, like Adafruit has a new button pressy thing," or, whatever.
Pressy thing.
You know what I mean? Like, "Have you heard the news?" "Yeah, .NET runs on a tiny microprocessor." Like, whatever silly thing that I'm going to be excited about. But that's what I'm wandering the streets.
I think that's one thing that I personally learned to love about working for Microsoft is that when you have this passion, if you really present it in an authentic way where you can represent your passion for it and how it can articulate whether it's diversity and inclusion or XYZ passion for tech, they're happy to integrate. If you can be a dinosaur in Microsoft, you can do anything in Microsoft. And, I think that it just shows how Microsoft does want people who are passionate about whatever they believe in. And I think that's one reason I do love working at Microsoft. The fact that I can go to my manager and say, "Hey, I have this community-based video series with an MVP in Switzerland, and I want to incorporate that into my job." And they're like, "Yep, go for it." That's really cool. And when I think about, we've already mentioned a bit about diversity and inclusion and how you're such an advocate of that. I was really interested in hearing about your interest for social networking for disease management. I've never heard of that. I'm very interested in the background and the passion around it because it's unique. And I think the audience listening to this would love to hear about it. I know I personally would.
So I'm a type 1 diabetic. which is
Okay.
different than type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes means that I have a non-functioning pancreas, so I do not make any insulin of my own. It's not a thing that I did to myself. I didn't eat too much candy. I can't fix it with yoga or tea or anything. There's literally nothing I can do other than to get insulin from an external source. So I have a insulin pump that's been plugged into me for the last 25 years. And it's got a tube, and the tube is plugged into me. And then I also have a battery and a sensor and a Bluetooth sensor implanted in my stomach over here on the other side. And it sends my blood sugar information into the cloud so that my wife can see it. I actually have it on my screen right here, so I can see what my blood sugar is right now. And then over the years, whenever a diabetic engineer happens, we try to solve it with, Microsoft Excel or whatever. So, 30 years ago when this happened, I was like, I'm going to solve this with software. And I wrote a Palm Pilot blood sugar management system. And I wrote a system, if you remember the Palm Pilot, little tiny personal digital assistant. And then, I wrote an Excel spreadsheet and algorithms. Every diabetic engineer always does that. However, when I did this was in the time of CompuServe, and there was no sense of community. It was hard to find other diabetics. To be social, we would go to user groups, and we would go to have dinner with all the other diabetics. So there was the Portland Diabetics user group, and we'd all sit around at probably somewhere we shouldn't go as a diabetic, like Olive Garden, and just hang out and talk about diabetes. But when online started to happen beyond CompuServe and AOL and the internet and forums and Reddit and Facebook and all these kind of things, the idea of extreme nurturing support at a distance for a disease, a chronic illness, whether it be diabetes or AIDS or just hypertension, became really, really interesting to me. What's interesting, particularly around diabetes, is because I have got all these different implants, I'm producing data which can then be shared. So if Isidora was diabetic also, and I had a question, I could say, hey, could you look at my blood sugar? She could go to my website, see the feed, and immediately offer feedback and data about that. Most diseases have some kind of a measurable metric and some kind of a closed loop, which means you can look at the numbers, think about the numbers, do something about the numbers, and then do that again, whether it be blood pressure or heart rate or something like that. So I find social disease management, being public and out with your thing, because everybody's got something. Everybody's got something. Nobody is going to get out of this alive. And then doing that publicly has become a thing that is kind of inspiring, because one time I was giving a talk and my blood sugar went low, and then I checked my blood sugar in the middle of the talk, and I had some glucose, and I continued, and I did it all very fluidly, smoothly, it didn't interrupt the talk. And someone afterwards said that their 8-year-old had been diagnosed about 2 months before, and they were like, what is this child going to do with their lives? I mean, they were really freaking. They were in the middle of the freak out. Will they be functional? And they just saw someone functionally give a talk, check their blood sugar, correct their blood sugar, and continue the talk without any major drama. And they were like, oh, wow. So this gets to the whole visibility, representation matters thing. Whatever your thing, whether it be amputee or diabetes or person of color or whatever, when you see someone who's like you, it's like, oh, cool. So when pump people see each other in the streets, we'll go and clink our pumps because it's because you can see them like the bat belt, and you're like, is that a pager? That's not a pager. So then you kind of get the pump nod from a distance. Hey, pump people.
That's seriously tech for good right there. And I think it's a reminder. I think what you said, especially in this day and age where we have so many, I call them hidden disabilities, whether it's like you said, diabetic or anxiety or depression or autism, or there's and there are things that there's things that you can't see. And I know for me, it's been a huge reminder to just be kind, because you literally don't know what somebody else is dealing with. And I think this is a huge example of, like I said, tech for good. So I appreciate you just sharing your story.
Definitely. Sure. And also, I had the honor, actually, Scott, to attend that session, which you gave in, I believe it was Zurich at the Tech Summit in Switzerland. right? So I experienced the story you just told. I was sitting in that audience. I remember the man at the end of the session who asked you that question in the Q&A. It's lovely that you bring it up now. It also brings up memories for me of actually being there, watching and listening to that session you did, which was very inspiring indeed. The son of my sister is a diabetic, and I remember after your session, I immediately spoke to her about it. So yeah, thank you for inspiring then and also again today. So on a different topic, TikTok. You have a huge variety of TikTok videos. I was scrolling through your through the feed, and I just loved how I saw like technical videos. I will not use non-technical, but non-coding videos. Tips and tricks, conversation with your kid in the car about Kanye who. Tell us please about how we got on TikTok, and how do you like the platform versus, I don't know, let's say Twitter or LinkedIn, like what's tell us your story.
Well, TikTok is I think kind of where the most creativity is going right now on the internet. I think that it is it's got the energy of Vine, but it's got a lot of features that are very social that people are able to use that were superior to Vine. One of the things that TikTok can do is if someone does a video, they can make the audio for that video usable as a sound. So there's a huge amount of creativity happening where people are lip syncing to a previous sound. So just yesterday, for example, I found a young person who had maybe 200 followers, and she was just kind of like, they call it, you know, you can bleep me out probably now. Basically, she was right. It's just posting a bunch of stuff, right? And there's nothing. And she was looking through her Twitter, and she was scrolling back, cleaning up and deleting old stuff. And she says, "I see here a tweet from 2019. I had an Uber ride with Clinton. I'll never forget you, Clinton. I don't remember you, Clinton. I don't have any idea who you are." And that was all it was. And then I thought about all the code that I had written over the years and how I'll look at code 2 weeks later and I'll be like, I have no idea who wrote this. I have no idea. So I just used her audio and then pointed at one of my repositories from like 14 years ago. And I just have her narrating how I'll never forget you. It's, you know, you're so special to me. And then like, I have no idea who you are. Right. So like those kinds of things. And that's a super basic example, but the stuff people are doing with transitions and edits, and they're doing the entire thing in phone. Most of the creators are doing all of their work in the editing on the phone rather than like fancy, you know, Premiere type stuff and After Effects that you would do somewhere else. And that burst of creativity has been really interesting. And I don't think I've been quite as excited about the internet since the GeoCities days, when you could just make your own web page and start coding. You know, that was a very exciting time. So even though I'm an old man on TikTok, there is old man TikTok, you know, which there's grandparents and grandmothers and grandfathers doing cool stuff. There's woodworking. The important thing to understand about TikTok is that when you show up first, you're going to see a bunch of weird stuff and you're going to think, maybe this is not for me. You'll see there's inappropriate corners of TikTok. There's adult content. There's all kinds of stuff. But if you search for 4 or 5 of your hobbies, it could be like I like. I'll just give you a short example. You know, woodworking, indigenous culture and dances. I have an interest in black hair because I'm dreadlocking my son's hair. I'm locking his hair. I'm interested in analysis of TV shows. So like Only Murders in the Building. So like people doing commentary, Marvel. I just search for those things and like those videos. And after a day or two, TikTok starts to figure out who you are. And it's a really great example where the algorithm works. It works. And I will go to TikTok like right now, and I'll tell you whatever I find, it's going to be freaking amazing. And it's like inspirational TikTok or, you know, Hank Green just shows up and he's teaching me about science. You know? Like that kind of stuff is so fun. The whole
funny
thing
about it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Do you know about the bones, no bones thing? Have you heard about this?
Educate us.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what happened on TikTok yesterday, because this is where I'm like, well, it's so exciting. So There was a woman in her car, and she's sitting there, and she says, "Well, mercury is in Gatorade, but the pug has bones. Let's get this bread." And someone was like, "That is the most internet, like born on the internet statement ever. Like, how would you even start to take that apart?" Well, mercury in retrograde or mercury in Gatorade is a funny thing that is misunderstood. And there was a whole series of TikTok videos about that recently. And then there's this pug named Noodles. He's a 13-year-old pug, very old dog. And he gets up every morning, and his owner stands him up, and he says, "All right, everybody, we're going to find out whether Noodles has bones today. Is this a bones day or no bones day? We don't know." And he puts Noodles there, and if Noodles is tired, he just collapses in this adorable little pug mush. And he goes, "Well, it's okay. It's a no bones day. We deserve a no bones day." And that just means that the day is going to be bad, and it's okay. Forgive yourself. But if Noodles stands on his own, then it's like, it's a bones day, everybody. We've got bones. So like the lady who was having her TikTok moment in the car, she's like, the pug had bones, so let's go. So when things work out, it's a bones day. And when it doesn't work out, it's a no bones day. So let's get this bread. Let's go get paid.
That's cute.
Oh, yeah. There's merch now. It's a whole thing.
I was just going to say, the funny part about what you're saying is the reason this whole season and series got started. We started it over a funny TikTok where we were razzing some of our friends. And that's literally, we got so many people liking it and retweeting it. And I thought, oh my gosh, we actually have something like together, because whether they're laughing at us or with us, we've got people in the midst of this pandemic laughing and connecting. And so that's really the beginning of this series, is TikTok. Who would have thought?
So my podcast, which has now had 815 episodes, was started because I told Carl Franklin in 2006 that podcasts suck. They had just been invented. And I was like, it's a huge waste of time. Why would anyone want to listen to a podcast? They're trash. And I wrote a whole blog post about how podcasts are a horrible idea because they were just being invented by Dave Weiner. And he's like, well, if you think that they suck, you should make your own. Well, like, I guess I will.
And here you are.
And here we are.
That's right.
Turns out they're actually a great way to build community.
They are, absolutely. So speaking of building community, you have had an amazing career of traveling the world, presenting in all different places. For someone who's not been, seeing the world, I am super curious to know, what was one of the coolest places you've traveled to and why?
Oh, wow. It is a privilege to travel.
It is.
And I have filled 3 passports. I would say either my wife's family's place in Soweto in South Africa, in Johannesburg, or Tallinn, Estonia.
Oh, God.
People are sleeping on Estonia. They got it. Isidora knows what's up. You know what? They're living in 3021 over there. They're super high tech, and everybody's got fancy broadband, but it also has cobblestone, so it looks like the 15th century. They are the perfect blend of super high tech e-passports and traditional, don't forget where you came from. It's an extraordinary country and they're probably just keeping it quiet because they don't want anybody to move there.
Yeah, I mean, it is very special. You've been there. I have not often heard people going there for like business or vacation or, yeah.
Vacation in Estonia would be amazing.
We'll add it on the list.
That might be my retirement town. I'll go to live in Tallinn.
Good. Come to this side.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
Right.
And once you're there, right,
yeah.
It's just a train ride to anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. I'm trying to tell Holly, it's like within Europe, if I travel 2 hours somewhere, I can be in Paris in some hours. It's like,
have you been to Europe, Holly?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. That's so fun. What you got to do is you got to fly to London. This is cheapest. Then you get on the train and you go in the channel underneath the ocean to France. And then once you're in France, it's like an hour to anywhere. It's crazy.
Well, we do have a goal. My husband and I have a secret goal of making it over there next year for a wedding anniversary. So
that's
stay
great.
tuned.
But you got to give yourself time. And there's this really old movie about people touring France. A very, very old movie. I want to say it's in the 40s or 50s. And it's called, If This Is Tuesday, This Must Be Belgium. because they were moving around so quickly. Like, where are we? I don't know. Well, it's Tuesday. I think we're in Belgium. And it's kind of this idea that it all blurs together, but it really doesn't. It's just extraordinary. And it also gives you a sense of how big the U.S. is. You know, if someone, I've heard stories of people showing up in New York and then going to the concierge at the hotel and saying, "Can we drive to the Grand Canyon and just be back by dinner?"
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's like a 7-day drive.
Well,
People
the
don't
fact
even
that you
realize.
fly like within the US, I mean, if I would fly within our country, I mean, yeah, that's just we're such a tiny little small country compared to USA. I mean, yeah. Anyway, Scott, before we finish off the show, so we started off at the beginning saying we were on a summer break. We were very excited to kick off this new season together with you. For the ones who did not know why we were on a break, it was because I was on a little maternity leave. And also during that time, I received a tip from somebody who actually tweeted, have you heard about Baby Smash? And then I looked at it, I went to the site. Okay, Scott, tell us about Baby Smash. I think it was 2008, if you go back in time, if I said it correctly.
Is that 15 years ago? Sounds like it. A long time ago. My son is learning to drive. So Baby Smash is a game that I wrote. My wife was watching a Lifetime television show, like a romance show, and I was being forced to watch it as well, because that's what you do when you're supportive. And so we're watching the show, and I'm sitting there, and the baby's in my lap, and he's hitting on the keyboard, and I'm thinking, what if he hit the keyboard and like colorful letters came out, and then when he like randomly got lucky and spelled a word, if he spells cat, like maybe all the letters would come together and say, look, you spelled a word, and it'd be kind of a fun thing. So I coded something really basic. It was like maybe 3 or 4 hours. And then I threw it on the internet, and then someone played with it, and then they send me audio of their baby saying Baby Smash. So then I asked them permission to use their baby's audio. That baby's now, I think, probably 16. So the opening audio is actually a friend's baby. And then it's open source, so it's on GitHub. And even now, I probably get 3,000 or 4,000 downloads. And then there's this famous YouTuber named Mr. Beast, and Mr. Beast's like crew discovered Baby Smash and did a TikTok that a couple of million people saw recently. So Baby Smash lives on, even though the child is going to be 30 one of these days. So yeah, it's all open source. So if you want to convert it to any language, or people have added Greek and different languages, so it's out there.
I'll definitely have to look into it.
I actually, Kathy Sullivan recently updated it to .NET 5. So it's super easy to build and run locally. So if you want to, add your own pictures, you could also have like family pictures like popping around, so like grandma and grandpa or whatever.
I'll start doing it, and I will let you know how it turned out. I might even record our little Amelia. All right, so Scott, it has been lovely to talk to you, to hear your stories, to talk about non-coding topics. Yeah, it's been a true blast. A huge thank you on behalf of me and Holly, and of course the entire community, for being on our show. We know how extremely busy you are, how wanted you are, so it's really a true gift that we got to talk to you today. So yeah, if there's anything else, Holly, you would like to say, or Scott, please give it away.
Well, I just want to say 2 things, quick with 3 things. One, I always say time is your greatest gift. So in agreement with what Izzy said, thank you for your time with us today. I find you extremely entertaining and fascinating. So thank you for your stories, for your feedback, for teaching us some tips and tricks along this journey this morning. And if you ever come across my daughter on TikTok, she's pretty skilled with editing. So I'm kind of impressed that you're on TikTok as well. So we'll have to follow you. So thank you for joining us, being with us on this restarting journey. And it has been an absolute pleasure to have you join us today. Thank you so much, Scott. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for letting me ramble. And I'm sorry that my stories are too long sometimes.
They're interesting and entertaining. I'm always in for a good story. So we always close the show with a little heart. Join us.
I do the Korean heart. Have you seen that?
Oh, that's also good.
Oh, look at that. I'm in.
In Vietnam, they also do it that way.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. All right.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of the week. And thank you for teaching us to remain in the presence.